We are live, and here we are again on our Friday evening. I look forward so much to Friday evenings, not just because of my glass of wine, but because each Friday for the last few weeks we've met and talked in depth with one of my lovely authors from the Rite of Passage Growth Academy. And last but by no means least is the lovely Jane Carson this evening. Hello, my darling. We're streaming live to Facebook, to Instagram, Facebook, to Twitter, and to YouTube. And then some of you might be hearing this on the podcast in retrospect. So welcome to you all, whether you're listening live or whether you're listening on replay. This is bound to be quite a wonderful interview. And me and Joanna were just getting a bit of a lowdown. And Joanna said, you need to go live. We need to say that again. So it's going to be a wonderful talk. Now, the interesting thing about Jane is there's lots of interesting things about Jane. But one of the interesting things about Jane is that she isn't in the UK with us, are you, Jane?
No. I've lived in Dublin for nearly 25 years. I moved over just after I married my Irishman, and so I've lived here ever since, and I am based on the Howth Peninsula on the north of Dublin Bay.
Wonderful. I've been to Dublin once, and I've been to the to Southern Ireland, Cork, and it's just beautiful. Yes. It's some beautiful places in Ireland, yeah. So it's quite nice. We're an international group. we welcome Jane from across the water each week. And actually, the interesting thing is Jane actually went to school with one of our other members, Beverly Bunn, didn't you?
I did. I was actually at school with Beverly from the age of 11. We went to school in Mepham, and then we went to the girls' grammar school in Gravesend. So I have known Bev for a really long time.
How wonderful.
And we rediscovered each other maybe 5 years ago when a mutual friend of ours who was actually in my class of school, we met up, and she said, will I ask my other friend Bev along? And Beverly turned up, and I said, well, I know you.
Yeah.
It was a real coincidence, but we've known each other a really long time.
It's lovely. The world's quite a small place now. And I actually went to the same school. I think I was 2 years behind you, not much, or a year behind you. So when I met Bev, she was like, I went to this school, and then you must meet my friend Jane. She went to our school. So it's 6 degrees of separation in this group. It's been quite a small world experience, which is lovely. So now, Jane, your book, it evolved quite a lot, didn't it, from how it started in the beginning?
It did. And I suppose what happened, Karen, was I took part on Beverly's recommendation, actually, in one of your mindfulness writing sessions that went over the course of a week. And I suppose I had this little window on the world of the Growth Academy girls. And I was thinking to myself, I'd really like to do that. But I didn't actually know what I was going to do. I'd always had a hankering to write, but I suppose like a lot of people, you have a hankering, but you never actually translate that into action. And it actually takes quite a kick up the rear end, to be honest with you, to turn the thought, the notion of it into something tangible. So I decided that I would like to join the girls because I really, really enjoyed the whole atmosphere, the chat, the exchange of ideas. And I thought, gosh, this will be really good fun. But I still did not have a breeze as to what I was going to write. So I was there and I was nodding and I was thinking, oh, my God, I really don't know what I'm doing here. But sure, I'll give it a lash and see what happens. And then I started having, I wouldn't call it a eureka moment, but I definitely had an aha moment when I actually went to my local GP's one day and I had an appointment with the nurse, some tests or whatever. And she was telling me that she was English, she'd moved to Dublin, and she was talking to me about, where she lived and that she'd just got an allotment. And I thought to myself, wouldn't that make a great story? And I started kind of playing around with that idea. But the further I got into it, I don't know about you ladies, but I just could not make it work. I could not get past that. This would be quite a nice story, and I started to write it, and then I just couldn't see my protagonist, my main character, going any further. I didn't have, is this the right way of putting it? I didn't have a relationship with her.
Absolutely, you do need to see their life progressing, and that's It's not pretentious to say. Sometimes you start a story and I've done it sometimes, you just get stuck and you cannot move forward at all.
Yeah. So I then and I was kind of faffing. I put my hand up and I say I was faffing terribly. And I think I was trying to there's a word that's used in Ireland that I love, which is it's plumbossing is the word. And that is, I would turn up at the weekly group and I would plumboss the others that I was making these great inroads into my writing and thinking, I really hope they bought that, because I know I haven't been able to get out of this quagmire that I'm in and my brain just wasn't there. So with all of that, I was still faffing around. And then I went out on my birthday this year and we went to the zoo. My husband, myself and my son. And on the way back from the zoo, so the zoo is set in the Phoenix Park, which is it's in the centre of Dublin, but it's kind of just on the periphery of what would have been the centre of Dublin years ago, before suburban sprawl and everything else happened. Yeah. So we were coming back from the park and I was looking at these very old houses that obviously were very grand houses at one stage. And they've been converted into flats. And I see this house, and in the very top floor, there are rows and rows of what looked to be cacti on the top floor. And I kept looking at it as we were driving by. The traffic was quite heavy. And I turned around to my husband, who was driving, and I said, that's where my lady's going to live. And all of a sudden, it was as simple as seeing a place, imagining my character living in a flat in this building, and all of a sudden it just all started tumbling out, and I was thinking, she could do this, she could do that, she could blah 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 blah, and all of a sudden there was this bare bones of a story. So her name's Angie. She arrives in Dublin. She wants to write a new chapter in her life. She moves into this flat in this older building, and the story is about how she meets her neighbours, and they're all very different.
I love that. Your characters are really diverse, aren't they? And I love that. I'm a big fan of that anyway.
They are very diverse, and certainly one of my ladies, the lady who is the cactus wrangler, as I like to call her, she is based on quite a number of people I know, actually. Quite a few years ago, I joined a ladies' society, which sounds terribly posh, but it's like the WI without the jam.
Yeah. And character rich, I should imagine, as well.
They're amazing. This group has been going for 56 years now. It was set up by a group of young mums who, at the time, they couldn't work or anything else. There were regulations here that when you had your kids, you couldn't go out to work anymore, essentially. And so they were at home. They wanted something to do. There are quite a number of our ladies now who would be in their 80s and their 90s, original members, and they're feisty, they're imaginative, and they're just this amazing group of women. The energy of them is tremendous.
I bet.
And so my cactus wrangler, she is a distillation of lots of these ladies. And she has a zest for life, and she just wants to be out there doing things. She's getting on in years herself, but her mental attitude is probably less than half of her actual age, So my lady moves in, and she has a job that she's going to start as a carer in a nearby residential care home. And it's about her settling into that. It's about her relationship with the neighbours. And it's also about when COVID hits. So it's very current. And I think for me, I had the opportunity to speak to somebody who trained carers in care homes in relation to COVID. And to be honest with you, I am so thankful to have the opportunity of that interview.
It really shines in the book. You can see the knowledge that you got from her and the insight that you got from her, I think has added so much power to your descriptions, because you've really used that knowledge well, I think.
I've tried. It's funny because, as you know, this is my first novel and I'm not like you ladies. I haven't done this before. And I kept thinking I have to take my reader by the hand through the story, and I have to create enough of a moment without kind of drilling down so much they're going to get bored about being in that place in the book. So it was about moving things forward, but there were certain aspects of the detail from this particular interview with this lady, and I just found it was really compelling what she was telling me about how people coped, how people manage, how you deal with people in homes with dementia and not being able to explain to them what's going on.
I know.
A number of them have something that's called walking with purpose, so they don't know where they're going.
That was so sad. That bit really did me. That was
so yeah, I you know, the whole thing about not really knowing where they are, but knowing that they need to be somewhere. But obviously the risks around them, if they've tested COVID positive and then they're off. So that this is I found it quite a cathartic thing to write, really. And I loved the emotion, and I did try and keep it light in places as well.
Oh, there are some really funny moments in the book, but it's really moving and it's really poignant. And I know you deliberated a bit about whether to put the whole COVID thing in there or not, and I think it's so much more powerful because you did, because it just, you know, your characters then, they, you know, your story is about unexpected friendship, isn't it, and the power of community. And I think that's something that during the pandemic so many people have experienced, and I found that incredibly moving, I have to say.
I think as well, another one of my characters, she's an agoraphobic, and she proves to the others that she's almost better equipped to deal with COVID and lockdown than any of the others. Because she's built this system of coping around her. And in fact, she reaches out to the others and she supports them when they're facing challenging times and in difficulty. So that was really, it was an interesting thing to think about as well. And how through their support, the idea of the possibility of somebody becoming invisible in the world and being forgotten. And there are a couple of characters in the book who, to all intents and purposes, have become invisible in their own minds or just in society in general. And I've tried to touch upon that, and how just seeing someone properly, to speak to somebody, to recognize them as another human being, as another essence in the world, the difference that can make in somebody's day. So it was a really kind of interesting exploration of personalities, and I deliberately stayed away from love interests and things like that. It was almost superfluous. It was that might sound strange, but I didn't think it needed it.
But the story's not really about that, is it? And I think you write beautifully. I think you're very good at imagery. So, you know, your descriptions are you use a lot of show, don't tell. You've been listening, Jane. You've been taking notes. So you're very good at, you know, descriptive writing. So you really, the reader does really become immersed in the story. And I love, and Joanna's probably the same as me, I love the fact that you really pick up on like tiny little nuances of a character's personality. And I think good writing is, you know, I love to see just little tiny bits about a person that may be completely unnoticed by anybody else, but it's those little bits that make the whole, isn't it?
It is. Do you know, Karen, a number of years ago, I trained as a Montessori teacher, and something that one of our lecturers said at the front is, try to look at the world as a 2-year-old looks at the world when everything is new.
Yeah.
And if you can try and apply that sometimes, I think it does give you a different take on things. We can all be very jaded by what our image of people might be and how different people are in their realities, really. So it's not only the things that we look at in the world, it's the people that we look at as well. So
yeah.
no, it's interesting.
Just got a comment coming from Jane here. She says, oh my God, Jane Carson, that is so powerful about feeling invisible. I felt that way for years, and I'm not in a, am I allowed to say where? I think she means nursing home. You're okay, Jackie. She has mentioned the nursing home. But yeah, those feelings of invisibility, you know, that happens to lots of us for lots of reasons. And I think that was really, and do you know what I loved? It felt like, and I'm sure this might resonate with Joanna as well. It felt like you once you, I love that process of like, you know, you were really stuck, you couldn't find your way forward. You drive past this, you know, house with the cacti in the window, the zoo and I didn't realise the zoo was really real, you know, and yeah, you know, but that's quite nice because it was hard, you know, knowing you a little bit as I do. I knew that there's some things were rooted in what you'd experienced, but it was hard to see where fiction and fact began and ended, which is the measure of a good book. And I love that you had that eureka moment. The story almost unfolded before your eyes and sort of just took you with it. So even I sometimes when I write, I feel like the story is taking me without not my consent, but I'm almost being led without not knowing
almost like automatic writing.
Yeah,
it's happening.
It's weird, isn't it? It's weird. Do you get that, Joanna?
Yeah, I was going to say that once I described it to a friend, it's like actually writing but reading. So when you turn the page, you're not quite sure what's going to be coming up on that page. But you know roughly what the story's about, but you still don't know how the story's going to unfold. You know the characters because you visualize the characters, and if you think they almost become real to you, like my characters almost become like not friends, I suppose. You know, I would actually go on a night out with them or invite them around for a cup of tea or something, and I can really visualize characters. But with the writing, turn a page and you can take it anywhere, can't you? You are in control of where it's going, but it's almost like you're reading a book yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's important to allow yourself to be led by it, because that's when I said to Jane, you know, don't get hung up on the editing, don't just let it flow, let it guide you, and that's exactly what she's done.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, Joanna, what you've just said about, you know, you it's almost like an anticipation, waiting for where you're going to kind of go with it next and how it's going to be. And I kept picturing it like a movie in front of me as well. You know, I was there. I've got the screenplay, I've got everything sorted.
Yeah,
it's mad. You're the writer and you don't quite know where you're going. How bonkers is that? People think really, but it's true, isn't it? You kind of, you are like you're in it, you're almost experiencing it for the first time as a reader, not just as the writer, which is what makes it such a beautiful process in my view.
And I think it's always I was going to say, I think it's always the people that are playing like a minor part that are the ones that really come to life in it, because you pour a lot of energy into your main characters and then suddenly you're introducing this neighbor or friend or distant relative and stuff, and you bring them to life, but you keep a little bit back for those characters, but in your mind you think, oh, if that was another book, this could be their story, or and it's forever unfolding.
What I just to your point as well, Joanna, about the fact that I think this is the only time in my life when I had complete and utter control over what was going on in it, and to be able to have these characters do your bidding without arguing about it.
It's almost godlike, isn't it?
It is. The power's gone to my head. I just absolutely love this idea that you're creating a whole world. And the interactions you're designing and the path that the individuals are going on as well, you're designing that. It's almost like one of those animated roads unfolding, isn't it, with the bricks coming into place, and it's all from in here, it's amazing. It's fascinating. I think it's an amazing thing to do, actually. If nothing else happened, the creative process.
I just think it's amazing. And I should say, Joanna, that Jane is a fabulous artist. She's a botanic, I think. Botanic, yes, I think. Botanic artist. So she paints beautiful pictures of the language of flowers. She did a gorgeous one for me that I've got in my kitchen. So I think you're obviously a creative person anyway, Jane, wouldn't you say? Must be.
You know, Karen, well, yes, I suppose I am now, maybe because I've given myself permission to be. But I mean, certainly I was having a little think about this before we started this evening, and I thought, what will you say to Karen if she talks to you about creativity? So, for a change, I thought ahead. That brick roadway isn't quite unrolling like that. So I always loved English. I always loved reading, and I didn't really, I suppose, do much with that in one sense. I studied law at university. I then spent years working in marketing and management consultancy, and I was a program manager. So I've kind of got, I once worked with a colleague who described me as a polymorph, and I couldn't make up my mind at the time whether he was insulting me or whether that was a compliment. But I suppose I've had quite an eclectic background, and there have certainly been aspects of my working life that have required quite a lot of creative thinking. But I didn't really allow myself to be particularly creative in terms of producing either artwork or anything else until I was 40, actually. So I didn't do art at school or anything like that. I found out almost by accident that it was something that I quite enjoyed doing. And I wasn't bad at. So I started painting at 40, and I went to art classes, and then the paintings that Karen's talking about, I started doing those 6 years ago. So I had this idea one evening. I was David, my husband, and I. We were at a ball, which sounds terribly posh. It was very posh, actually. I don't get out much. So we were at this event anyway, and we were sitting with a couple, and they were expecting a baby, and they were super, super organized. They were so looking forward to having this child, and like any excited parents would be, really, but they'd planned a whole life out. And I went home and I thought to myself, what do you get for people who have everything? What do you do? And I'd read a book. I've actually got it behind me. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but this is the book that, sorry, I'll get that there. This.
The Language of Flowers.
The Language of Flowers. So it's a novel. And I read it and I thought, gosh, that's a really cool story. Then I went back to it. And as a result of that, I started translating the meanings of names into the language of flowers. So I find a flower that means the same sentiment as a name, and I produce these little watercolors. I'm actually painting one at the moment, so I don't think I'm giving any secrets away. I'm just doing that with my camera. Don't know if you can see it. So these are roses and lucerne, and that they represent two names, this lady. So I paint these little pieces and I frame them, and I've been doing that for I suppose about 6 years really. And so the opportunity to write after that, I've done so much research, and I've done some speaking on the subject as well. I've gone along to interest groups and talked to them about the background of the Victorian language of flowers, and it's fascinating, and it's grounded in mythology and I suppose the restraints and constraints of Victorian society. So it's fun, and I've always enjoyed doing the presentations on it. So then to move away and start writing about something completely unrelated, well, it's not completely unrelated because
you did squeeze some plants in there, didn't you?
I had to get a plant in there somewhere, really, and there are a few. But yeah, so I suppose there's a latent creativity and there's a latent interest in creativity. There's also quite a strong interest in reading. I've been in a book club now for, oh gosh, probably 14 or 15 years. And we are all great friends. And, you know, they're really special women to me. And I suppose that was another source of inspiration about the friendship thing. You know, the fact that when you're with a group of people that you really trust and you rely upon and you have all of this shared experience, you can throw anything into the circle and it doesn't matter.
No, nobody's too shocked.
Because people just deal with it and they rally around you. They circle the wagons. They give you all the support that you need. And that's really important. So I suppose a lot of my life in Dublin, coming as another lovely term that they call it here, as a blow-in.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love the Irish, don't you? They have some wonderful terms for stuff, don't they?
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, and I'm most definitely a blow-in, even after nearly a quarter of a century.
Yeah. But how long do you have to have lived there before you're not a blow-in? Or do you
I don't think I will ever be anything else, Carol. With this kind of accent, I still go into shops and they say, "Oh, you're on holiday," and I'm saying, "No, I live here." "Oh, have you been here long?" And I say, "Yeah." Yeah, I have. But do you know, I think the thing for me is that I've always loved living here, and I love my experience has been that everyone that I've met, it's almost like they've got this big extended blanket that they throw around you and they make you feel welcome. And I've been really, really blessed with people that I've encountered either through my work life or I suppose the connections with the kids as well when they were tiny.
Yeah.
And meeting the mums and building those kind of networks. It's very special. And then I suppose the ladies club, the book club, what else have I done? Oh, I joined a cabaret club as well. So I sing.
Like you do.
So no, I think I'm one of these people. I decided very early on that I could either be on my own and lonely, even though I was married and I had a job to go to, or I had to say, well, and I suppose this doesn't really matter where you're living or what you're doing.
No.
You either say, I'm going to be of myself and I'm going to close myself off from everyone else, or I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to create these, networks of people that I have, that I can help, that can help me, I suppose, just enjoy.
Yeah. That's precious, though, isn't it? You might as well, you might as well, you sound a bit like me. My husband always says you always regret the things you don't do. So just try everything once, and if you don't like it, don't do it again.
Absolutely. And I go to I do very strange things, Joanna. I go to this line dancing class once a week with a group of seniors. Actually, it's deadly. It is. It's brilliant.
That is a book. That is a book.
Oh, it's amazing. And the lady that runs it, she is an absolute diamond. She is just incredible. And, you know, I feel really honoured to know her because the energy that she brings to it is incredible.
Amazing. Yeah.
So, you know, all of these different things, some of them are a bit more street cred than others. Maybe none of them are street cred, actually. I'm not a yummy mummy that goes swimming. I do not have a dry robe. I have the utmost respect for people that do. And I really, really admire them. But this doesn't lend itself to that.
Although I walked my dog on the beach today and a man emerged from the sea, and bless him, he wasn't Daniel Craig, shall we say. He was quite he's quite a small build. There wasn't a lot of meat on the bone, so he must have been absolutely bloody freezing. And he came out and he looked the colour of a sort of a newly boiled shrimp. I thought, and it looked so like the most unpleasant experience. I thought, rather you than me, my friend. I had to, just take my hat off to him. I don't think I'll be getting a dry robe anytime soon, maybe. Although
no,
Joanna,
you do it, don't you, Joanna?
Well, she's going to try and get us all to dip in the sea.
Next year. We'll pick you up en route because I know I had to get the bus from Dublin. So can
I be at the water's edge with the flask of hot chocolate?
Yeah.
No.
I'll be the one tipping the brandy into the hot chocolate, Jane. We'll do refreshments, don't worry.
Then you can teach us some line dancing when we go out partying afterwards.
I love a bit of line dancing.
Oh, yes. Actually, quite a few times I've written shows for the Ladies' Society, and we always have a finale dance. So the shows, I tend to theme them. So there was one about friendship, and then we had, I've written a few pantos for them. I did one set in a 1920s speakeasy.
Love it.
As well. So, you know, I was going through all of the dances and writing sketches and things like that. So that my ladies have done a bit of line dancing. The sign of a good line dance is everyone ends up facing a different way.
I always go the wrong way. When they do the grapevine, I'm always smashing into the person next to me. I'm supposed to be. Jackie's just asked a question here of you, Jane. She says, what has been the best part of the whole experience you've had with joining the Academy, writing and completing your book? I mean, what will stay with you apart from your book?
Right. I didn't think I had the staying power to finish.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I did not really, although all of these good things that I've said, I didn't appreciate that I was going to put the last word down in the way that I did. And it was one of those things. I just kept thinking to myself, you have to persist with this.
Yeah.
And it would have been the easiest thing in the world to close the document and not open it again.
Mm.
And I suppose that's really stayed with me, that I started in a rather woolly fashion. I found my story. I worked through it. I had a few things that were going on towards the latter parts of writing that personally, outside of writing or anything else, I found very, very difficult. And I could not find my way to sitting down at the keyboard. I just... my heart and my head were just not in it at that stage. So to get to this point and to sort of say, well, I actually did this. And I suppose the big thing, Jackie, if you're listening, Jackie, one of the lovely things is I've met a really extraordinary group of women who all have fantastic stories to tell outside of the stories that they've written.
Yeah.
I think we've all had those periods of, oh gosh, I'm not sure if I can do this. And we've all rallied around each other and given each other that little bit of a prod to say, well, yeah, you can actually. And it's been an unquestioning faith in each other. And I think sometimes it's not even the, of course you can, don't talk rubbish. There was none of that. It was absolutely you can. And there were no caveats or conditions associated with that. It was just belief. And so I thought, after all of this belief being shoveled on me, that I better see it through and just merit it and merit all of the support and all of the kindness, really. So that, I think that will stay with me for a long time, actually.
I think this group has been, there's nothing like a bit of peer pressure to make you feel bad if you don't do what everyone else is doing, is it? Jackie says she's got a really big smile on her face. And I think for me, one of the absolute honours of working with you, lovely ladies, is that you've all committed to the cause. I mean, Fiona, bless her heart, who joined the group just for a little chat, and when I said to her, you're going to write a book, she went, oh, God, really? I hadn't thought about that. I don't know what she thought we were going to do. But it's been absolutely joyous, like you say, Jane, to see how each of you has built each other up, have empowered each other, and not just in a glib, like, oh yeah, you know, it's all right, don't worry, they're there. But, and I mean, I sort of said last week, Bev was so excited about buying one of your book, you know, I talk about you collectively as a group, as she was about buying her own. And I just thought, what a beautifully joyous thing that is, that we've, you know, gelled together. And like you say, sometimes it's been tough, hasn't it? Sometimes it's been a bit stressful. Sometimes you feel a bit demotivated or a bit like, oh my God, I actually can't do this. I don't know where I'm going with it. But the fact that, you know, it's a bit like your book, really, you know, these unexpected friendships of all these people dotted around, sort of geographically miles apart, have really, through this common ground, have really sort of knitted together, formed their, and they're just so supportive of each other. I just think it's been such a beautiful experience. And I think, you know, there's a lot to be said if we're getting a bit cheesy and metaphors for life and all the rest of it. But, you know, they say, you know, we're greater than the sum of our parts and all of that sort of stuff. But we really have built each other up. And as a group, we've become this thing that's kind of unstoppable, where we might not quite have, I'm not saying you were all completely capable, but the camaraderie and the sense of group is what's got us all through. Oh, Jackie said, I wouldn't have wanted to do it with any other women. Ooh, not sure I should say that out loud.
We're going back to that place, aren't we?
Yeah. You know, the tone always drops. A couple of sips of wine and it all goes wrong. But, you know, I just think it's really been a heartening, joyous thing.
I definitely think, certainly there were I had a few wobbles, and I thought, I'm just not going to be able to get this done. The other thing actually is that although I had a sense of where I was going, I actually was struggling to find an ending.
Yeah.
Because of course, COVID hasn't ended.
No.
You know, we're still actually in the middle of it, and possibly in the next couple of months we could be worse than ever, actually. Where do you, that was one of the questions that I had, and I was struggling with, well, if I'm setting this in a particular time, how do I close this? How do I close this story? So I spent quite a lot of time thinking about it, and there is a natural break, which I'm not going to disclose because that's the
no spoilers, Jane.
But I had to find quite an elegant solution to that without saying, and they all lived happily ever after, and it was all done, and everyone was great. But you know, it was quite difficult to get to that stage, and when I was trying to wade through treacle with everything else that was going on at the time, I found it even more difficult. My brain just wasn't focusing sufficiently on what are my options here. And in the end, I had a load of Post-its out in front of me on the desk, and I, you know, it was like ending 1, ending 2, you know, in these movies when you said, you know, the possible ending, and you go through them all, and I was playing them out, and in the end, what I got to was the only one that I actually felt was comfortable for me, because otherwise it seemed too contrived.
Yeah.
You know, to sort of say, oh, and that was all over and done with,
Yeah.
and everyone lived happily ever after and whatever. So no, certainly that's been quite an interesting thing as well. And it comes back to the design thing that we were talking about, Joanna, you know, the idea about having ownership for it. And just, you know, you can steer things, but obviously this is very much living in the now, if you like, and about things that have happened in the recent past. So there are references to, you know, news reports, government announcements. There are, I surprised myself. I read an awful lot of health executive reports for the
Things we
past
do
year.
for our craft.
I went through them and highlighted them, and then made notes, and then related them back to certain points. So it was a really interesting research project as well. And I think it just put things in context for me a lot more.
Yeah.
So
no, it's been great. It's been great, and it's just been lovely to be part of that. No, because normally writing can be quite lonely, can't it, Joanna? Sometimes, you know, you're just stuck in your story, but to share other people's story and watch that unfold, it's been quite nice.
Yeah, I didn't really experience the whole sort of friendship thing until I started networking, and that's where I met you.
Yeah.
And you know, it was because of excitement. I wanted to write this book and everything, and I was quite, you know, when we went on holiday, the kids would be playing cards with their grandparents, and I'd be sort of sat on the computer, sort of typing away, and it, you know, we all worked together. But that's how it was, and it wasn't until I actually started connecting with other authors, and like I say, yourself, and that realized what a beautiful world the writing world is, the whole writing community, because there's no competition, no one's story is the same. We're all working towards pouring our own, you know, thoughts into our own stories, whether it be fact or fiction, and they're to support each other. The support out there is amazing. You've only got to ask. And I first came into it thinking, oh, I've only written one book, and that soon got stamped out of me. But it was a case of, wow, you know, people, there's not a lot of industries, I think, where people are willing to share for fear of competition, or you know, fear of someone, I suppose, imposter syndrome, everything. But with the writing community, it's amazing, I think.
It is lovely, isn't it? Yeah.
I agree with that. And I would notice that a lot with, you know, visual arts, that there's always a danger in terms of, you know, the way that you style things, the way that you see things. And then I touch wood, I have never had an issue with it, but I do know people who feel that their work is being plagiarized, and because it's a visual medium, you know, it is quite difficult. But I think with writing, obviously you can still get plagiarized, but I think it's much more challenging. As I say, it's even that barrier between people saying, oh, I'd love to write a book, and then how many people actually move beyond that to even making a start. And I would say it's probably infinitesimally small.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that somebody gears themselves to do it. So I think
it's not an overnight thing, is it? It's not something that you can say, oh, I'm going to make, I don't know, a dress or something, which is a you know, I'd love to. My mother-in-law's an amazing seamstress, and she sort of whips out patterns and makes outfits and things like that. So I won't discredit anyone that is creative and makes things like that. But with writing, it's not an overnight thing, and it is so time consuming. And then so it has to be a sort of a passionate thing. And it's not like, I mean, we're all aware of the fact that you don't go in it for the money. I mean, it's nice when we're all sitting there, you know, on our private beaches drinking our champagne every day in the future. But at the moment, it's a lot of hard work, but it's so I'd do it. Well, I am going to do it again and again as
Yeah.
much as I can.
Yeah.
You know,
It's so rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that feeling of, like Jane says, so many people say, oh, I'd love to write a book, but never actually do it. So the fact that I always used to say to the girls, like, do not underestimate what you've achieved here, because lots of people say they're going to do it and never actually do. So jolly well pat yourself on the back and say, yay, I actually did. And like Jane says, you reach points where you think, oh my, about 5 years ago, I very nearly quit completely. I was like, this is too hard. I can't do it. I don't know how to, had that whole kind of thing. So it takes a bit of resilience, a lot of tenacity. It takes a fairly thick skin. I think maybe that's probably what I mean. But it takes a lot of perseverance. So you shouldn't, like you say, it's not an easy win. So the pleasure that you get from having completed that, when it isn't such an easy win, is to be really celebrated and congratulated, because it's a wonderful thing. And I think one of the reasons that writers boost each other up is because A, they all understand how jolly hard it is, and B, the power of stories is that there is an infinitesimal, whatever that word is, we're never going to run out of stories, are we? Never ever, because every story will be told slightly differently, or it's quite funny with Jane's book. Her agoraphobic character, is her name Siobhan, Jane?
Oh, Sinead.
Sinead. There we go. And I know her. I know what she looks like. Now, she might look nothing like what Jane imagines she looks like, but I know her to the point that I know what it looks like inside her flat. I know what, and I won't sort of do any spoilers, but at certain points she does things in the story. I know how she looked when she did that. I almost know what she was wearing. I mean, how weird is that? But how wonderful that is that Jane's told that story, and I know that person, even though I've never met that person, and I have no idea, Jane's configuration of that person. So I think the wonderful thing about books, like when they say, oh, the book was always better than the film. And I've seen a couple of films where it wasn't true, but generally the book is better than the film. And my friend said that the reason for that is because everybody's playing their own private film in their head.
Yes.
Isn't it?
So, absolutely.
And there's no end to that, is there?
No. I tell you, actually, the other really big win for me was when my husband, I sent the manuscript to him, and I said, here, have a read of that, will you? And he read it in a couple of days, and he came back to me and he said, I really enjoyed that.
Oh.
And he gave me a little hug and he said, well done, you. He said, I'm so proud of you that you've done this. And
lovely.
He said, I didn't know what to expect, and I would have been kind.
Yeah. If it was terrible, I would have told you.
If it was awful. But no, it was really lovely. And I mean, I have to say, huge thanks to him as well, because now he is going through it again, page by page, and dictating notes for me to just say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Or you might need to think about this, and blah, blah, blah. So he is going through it again, chapter by chapter, having already read it for me, God love him. And
isn't that lovely?
He's been brilliant.
Yeah. Well, my book's a bit like Joanna's. I write a lot of chick lit. So it's not, I mean, this is a very sexist thing to say, but it's not the sort of thing that my husband would read. He's not a huge fan of chick lit. I know that's quite a cliched thing, but I'm sure there's a lot of men out there who aren't huge fans of chick lit. But when he read, I think it was when he read Tarts with Darts anyway. Oh, he went, that was great. He said, that's your best one yet. And it just made me laugh, because it's like, it's so not his genre and so not his thing. But he said, yeah, it's all right. And even though he was saying it as though I would never pick up that book normally and I would never read it, but he valued it for what it was, that's just makes you feel great, doesn't it?
It really does.
My husband's not read mine.
Oh, Margie, yeah, Joanna, that might be dodgy. Could be dangerous reading your sauciness.
No, I feel like, where'd you get that idea from? I read a lot.
Well,
I read a lot.
Well, funny you should say. Colin did say to me, he said he read a couple of the sex scenes. He went, I felt slightly uncomfortable. He said, and I don't put a lot of smut in mine. There's the odd little bit of tryst here and there. And he went, and I did say, well, I don't know where you got that from, because that's never happened in this house. I was like, well, vivid imagination. What can I say?
But we do. We are like sponges. If you read a lot of books, you're like sponges. So what we sort of like gurgitate. I can't say that word.
Regurgitate.
As a book in our stories is a little bit of every single book that we may have read over our lifetime, or every film that we've watched, and that.
Yeah.
Because I wrote about places that I've been to. But I kept it a little bit vague, because it wasn't like I wasn't saying a particular village or a particular town or anything. I kept it. One was a fictitious town in my first book, which is where I actually want to live. So I've created my own sort of fictitious town that I've told my husband we are moving to.
Not been built yet, but that's mine, is the town.
Yeah, it has. But yeah, it's just how you can explore with your imagination and just bring everything that you've been researching into as a reader your whole life, and get your take on it. Really,
it's wonderful. Well, you talk about Jane's talking about her life, and there's so much of her in her story, but then that's true of me, and I'm sure it's true of you, Joanna. You like you say, you bring little. It makes me laugh when people say, "Oh, I used to live in Balmoral Road," and I'm thinking it's not that Balmoral Road. I just wanted a word with 3 syllables, and it just so happens that you live in. I haven't got the heart to burst their bubble. Or they go, "Oh yeah, I think I know that person," or is that and it's not. It's so fragmented, isn't it? It's so like little. It's almost like writing tapas. You take a little bit of that and a little bit of that until it becomes probably unrecognisable, but recognisable in bits, if you know what I mean.
Well, interestingly, our first house was very close to the Phoenix Park, so when my daughter was born, that was my daily walk. I would walk her through the park, and I mean it's huge, this place, really, really enormous. It has polo fields, cricket grounds, has huge expanses where deer roam. The American ambassador's residence is there. The President of Ireland lives there. There are, I think, 75 private houses within the park grounds. The head office of the police, the Irish police, the Garda Síochána, Dublin Zoo. There's an official residence for foreign dignitaries to stay in as well. So this place is really, really huge, and I used to walk in it every day. So as I was writing the park, I was referencing back to all of the things that I used to see when I was off on my morning walk, and used to spend a lot of time in the zoo as well. I got a year-long pass, so that was another alternative morning walk that I would do. I would walk around the zoo.
How lovely!
So it was great, actually. Really good.
Yeah.
So all of those bits would have huge resonance with me, because I can picture myself doing them, so no, I think you have to not necessarily experience every single thing, but I think you have to anchor enough in your personal experience to make it credible.
You need a little bit of authenticity, don't you?
And to make it authentic, because otherwise it's too vague, it's too artificial. You have to have those little snippets of things that really bring the reader back into, I can picture myself there, actually. Or in your case, tethered up, or whatever it is, Joanna.
I'm not sure anyone's been tied up in my books.
Oh, that's a story for another day, Joanna. There's always time.
Well, I've got a lady that's coming into the book 3 who's actually somebody that we've met through networking, and she won the competition for the raffle, which was to be like a named character in the book. So that I'm sort of like,
does she know what she's letting herself in for?
Yeah, well, we haven't had the proper chat yet, but I'd already created before I'd already got a character in mind before she actually won the raffle, so it was perfect. So she's just got a name to, and she said, I don't care as long as is it someone from Sex in the City she wants to be. So I said, fair enough, I can jazz you up a bit.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny? It's wonderful. So Jane, the burning question on everybody's lips, are you going to write again?
Yes, I definitely am.
Perfect.
I'm a bit of a sado control freak, actually. So I have a Word document on my laptop with book ideas, and I've already got a list of potential 6 of different scenarios, which will either be, will probably be culled in some shape or form, but if they're not individual stories, I think they could probably be knitted into a story, the various themes going through. So yeah, I'd love to write again. I'm actually missing it. I am still at the moment going through this process, this final edit process. So I'm hoping that the final thing will be done and dusted and away from me by Monday. That's the
Got to let it go at some point, Jane. You've got to let it go.
I have to, yeah. I feel like the anxious mother not ready to send it out into the world. I need to put it on that little kite string and let it go.
You have to wrench it out of your
I do, yeah. So no, but I'd love to write again. I really I think it's quite compelling, actually.
Yeah.
When you've done it and you realise what you can achieve.
It's a bit of a bug, isn't it? Once you get bitten by the bug, it's kind of once you realise you can do it, because I spent so long thinking I couldn't or didn't know how or the logistics of it. Once I realised I could, I'm like, woohoo, I'm on a roll now.
Yeah, I think when it's actually, for me, it's even silly things like seeing the word count go up. I know that probably sounds really stupid.
No, I get it, yeah.
And all of a sudden, when it goes from 10 to 20 to 30, and you're thinking, well, I was thinking anyway, God, I haven't written this much since I did my dissertation when I was at university. And where's this going now?
Yeah.
And then when it just keeps clocking up, and I'm thinking, it actually doesn't matter how many words there are anymore, because I think there is a point when that's what you're aiming for, just to have that sense of solidity about the story, that you've got enough down that it feels as if it's real.
Yeah.
And then after that, it doesn't really matter, because it's just the story coming to life. And however long it is, is how long it's going to be.
Yeah. And if you're not prepared to let some of those characters go that you've been writing about, and you want to sort of keep ticking over with it, then what I enjoyed is writing little short stories about the characters that didn't quite have it in them to be a whole book, but they've got a backstory. And I've got ideas but you're still with them. Then you still got the characters. You can write a little short story, because short stories are quite big out in, there's still quite a demand out there for short stories. You've got the characters coming to life still, and just brings that little bit of extra to your writing, I think.
I love that idea, Joanna. I love that.
Yeah, I'd love to do an anthology of short stories. I've got loads of ideas for short stories, and I think I will, at some point do that, maybe, because I've bought books before that are like, 5 short stories in a, I don't know, 40,000-50,000 word book. And I love that, because you can, like people who go to work on the train, or when people are finally allowed to go on the train, but you could just read one sort of there and back, or you could sort of almost do half in your lunch break. And there's something quite nice about that. It's quite sort of a bit of a, quick sort of guilty pleasure, isn't it, really? So you can sort of do the whole story.
Yeah, and there's closure on the story almost immediately. You have that, you get to know them, and then it's like, oh, well, bye.
Yeah. Get to the money shot pretty quickly, but it's good. So, it's been so lovely chatting with you, Jane, and I have to say you've been such a wonderful member of the Academy. Everyone's loved having you in the Academy, because Jane is our voice of reason. Jane is our meticulous planner. Jane is the one who kind of really has a great eye for detail, so she's been the one who's sometimes helped us all to kind of like, well, have you thought about that? And we go, oh no, Jane, we haven't thought about that. So she's been wonderful in that stuff. But you know, reading your writing has been a joy, and it's lovely for me that you've got so much pleasure from it, because that's really all I wanted, was for people to do it and get a ridiculous amount of pleasure from it, both from the achievement and from the process. So that's me quite happy.
Karen, if nothing else ever came of it, to have you come back to me and say, oh, it made me cry, Jane, and for my husband to say to me, well, I really enjoyed that, love, that was really good. I don't need anything else really after that.
That is it, isn't it? Yeah, to know that your writing has resonated with somebody to cause an emotional reaction. As a writer, that's my job, my work here is done.
It's really fulfilling. Fulfilling.
Oh, it's wonderful.
And I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you both this evening as well. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been lovely. And we're going to zoom Jane in to our author events, a bit like Freddie Mercury at a Queen concert. We're going to have her on the screen because
on a tripod with the
she'll be with us. Yeah, we'll be parading her around because
I have to get a yellow leather jacket. That's the only thing I'm missing.
Maybe not a tash. Yeah, maybe not a tash though, Jane. I'm not sure. Although I'm growing one even involuntarily at the moment, so I might grow one for you. But no, it's been amazing to talk to you this evening. It's been lovely. I look forward to more of our journey. Who knows what's to come and what's coming next? But it's just been an absolute joy. So if you've been listening live, thank you very much for joining us. If you're listening on the replay, thank you again for joining us. Or if you're listening on the podcast, thank you again. It's wonderful. And if you've got any questions, or you want to get involved, or you want to write a book of your own, then get in touch with me, Karen Stanley, at Karen Stanley Author. You can pretty much find me. I'm like a bad penny. I keep turning up all over the place. So it's just been lovely, Jane. As always, it's been a joy.
Thank you.
It's been a joy. And we'll see you all again next week. You will be able to experience all of us in one go. You might need a drink for that because it's quite high octane stuff. All 6 of us in one room, and 7 if the lovely Joanna's able to join us. That could be quite the party. I think we might have to have cocktails and Christmas hats for that one. So we'll see you all again next week, where we'll be all joining you all together to get very excited about our journeys. So thank you for joining us, and see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye. Okay.